Hi, this is the short story is. We are wrapping things up in 2023, and today we're going to be looking and forecasting things for 2024. For this special occasion, we are welcoming Dan Calladine here, the head of media futures for dentsu. Well, Dan, head of media futures, that's a lot. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I normally sound very well, but I'm suffering from a little bit of a cold, which seems to be lingering a bit. So if
Oh,
my
and
voice,
December in London.
well, exactly, if my voice feels a bit sort of husky, then that's the reason for that.
So let's use it wisely then. It's December 2023, and then we issued quite a bunch of reports wrapping things up and looking into 2024, which is quite exciting. So today we're going to be talking about two reports in particular: ad spend, so the way brands and advertisers are spending money to advertise their products or their brand, and media trends. So like what's the lookout? What do we see coming next in 2024? For our external audience, what are we studying exactly in those reports, and what's the methodology behind each report?
Well, the short story is that we produced two reports recently. The ad spend report came out at the start of December. The media trends report came out at the start of October. Ad spend report is collated from talking to 58 of our markets about what they're seeing in the market, collating the numbers from them, and then our experts analyze these figures, and we help produce a report that really looks at what's happened this year, but also what's happening going forward to 2026 across the different media that we deal with. The media trend report is, which as we say, came out in early October, is looking at the world of 2024 through 10 specific trends that we see within the media around things like generative AI, around things like what's happening with the big platforms, but then also things like sustainability, diversity and inclusion. And how that is created is essentially talking to our strategists and our partners around the world, looking to see what sort of questions their clients are asking, looking to see what sort of things we can do now that weren't possible a year ago, looking to see the sorts of innovations that we've seen within media, and in trying to see which of these things are likely to stick and likely to make a big impact into 2024 and beyond.
The latest ad spend report says that 2024 is going to be the year of big media moments. What are those big media moments exactly?
So one of the things which drives ad spend is big events that people can spend money around. So, for example, sporting events. Next year we have Euro 24 football tournament in Europe. We have Copa America in the Americas. We've also got the Olympics and the Paralympics both happening in Paris. And then also there's going to be an election in the States, an election in India, and potentially other big elections around the world. And so all of these things are places where people will be spending money, where advertisers will be spending money. And this is going to help drive total ad spend to a higher level next year than it has been this year.
At the same time, well, this sounds as a pretty exciting moment, and this sounds like a big year, really, in terms of events. And when else would we compare the Olympics and the presidential elections? Let's say, yeah, that's the way to go. Yet at the same time, after more than 2 decades of year-on-year growth, the global digital ad spend is sort of slowing down to a single-digit growth for the first time in 2023. So is that a disturbing trend, and what does that mean exactly for brands, and what do they need to expect from 2024 in light of this?
So there's a few things going on. So firstly, digital ad spend is still growing. It's growing but slowing, as we say. So it has been growing at over 10% a year for the past 20 years or so, with a couple of notable exceptions. What we're now seeing, or what we're now expecting, is a slower growth of something like 6.5% or so a year. But within that, what we have is Meta, who seem to be still growing at double digits. Amazon seems to be growing at double digits. YouTube seems to be growing at double digits. So there's quite a lot of variety between them. I think what that means is some of the digital players who aren't the massive platforms, I think they're being really squeezed. There's greater competition between them. So what we're seeing for clients is more inventory up for sale because everybody's trying to monetize much more of what they're doing. So, for example, Instagram now has search advertising. And in fact, Instagram is massively increasing the frequency of adverts on their platforms. So what we see for clients is more opportunities to advertise, but then potentially more clutter as well. Because there's, if there's 30% more ads on a platform, then there's greater competition for attention among the audience.
If it becomes really noisy on a particular platform, like your example with Instagram, what do we see as a trend? So basically platforms are offering brands and advertisers more space, so more frequency, or are they trying to be more inventive with the way the ads are being shown or with the way the ads are in general?
There's a bit of, there are new formats coming along. As I say, there's search advertising for Instagram and TikTok now, which is coming through. So if somebody searches within those platforms, and increasingly, I think we're seeing people almost treating them as search engines. So looking for how to do things, looking for advice, looking for new products. It's possible now for brands to buy some of those search terms so that they appear within the results. But also, yes, it is about greater frequency. And in that case, it's really about understanding what sort of positions you can buy that are more likely to be noticed, that are more likely to get the public's attention.
You mentioned, and I think that's absolutely right, that every year there's a massive fight for people's attention. And there's a thing mentioned in the report called the dentsu attention economy program. Could you talk us through that one?
Yes, so the attention economy program is something which we've been running since about 2017. So sort of 5, 6, 7 years or so we've been doing this. Essentially, the theory behind it is there's an abundance of impressions, but attention is very scarce. We see more and more adverts every day. So that's scarce, but we need to make sure that we're actually being able to measure when people are paying attention to something, when people are engaging something. So what we've developed is capabilities to allow brands to measure and to optimize this attention, and then also to prove the relationship between somebody paying attention to something and it having a positive brand outcome. So essentially, they remember the advertising more the more seconds that they actually see it. So, for example, we've developed metrics like attention, which is what percent of impressions generate attention. We've also got ones like dwell time, so the number of seconds that people have actually spent looking at particular advertising. Obviously, there's brand outcomes in terms of things like awareness and other metrics like that. But we also have this measure, which is the effective attentive second. So we can actually compare online video to audio to TV to different sorts of channels. And because we've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years, we've done studies in things like online video, in things like video games, so in-game advertising. We did a big piece this year on audio advertising, where we looked at a number of different platforms. So effectively, you can take these different platforms, which are very different and have very different pros and cons as advertising mediums, but you can have a almost like a benchmark figure for an effective attentive second. So to generate this in audio costs approximately this, to generate this in video costs approximately this, and then this can be fed into the planning tools that we have for our clients as well.
You've been looking at the industry, you've been studying the industry for quite some years now. So in the ad spend forecast in 2024, was there anything that surprised you? Was there anything so unexpected that you thought, whoa, I've never really seen that coming?
I think we're all becoming, there is more advertising. I think we're all trying to become more clever at trying to work out which sort of placements work for this which sort of messages for which sort of brands. So one of the things that we look at in the ad spend report is the different media. And when we look at print, when we look at, when we look at news brands, when we look at audio, when we look at cinema, when we look at out of home, we can see not only the ad spend for those different platforms, but we can also see by talking to our experts what sort of brands should be advertising there, what the advantages of advertising. So something like cinema, which has still not returned to the level it was at pre-pandemic, and in fact that's for both box office but also ad spend as well. It's still a fantastic medium because people are alone in a dark room with little else to do when the advertising comes on, compared to, say the screen of their laptop or their TV or whatever. And so all of the different media, have different advantages, different sort of unique attributes and things like that, which is really fascinating. So that said quite a lot. We also tried to do some really innovative analysis this year with the ad spend report, where we looked at we looked at the relationship really between a country's GDP, so the total income being generated by a country, and the level of ad spend, to see if there was a pattern there. And we also looked at the level of ad spend per head in different markets. And in both of those, there was really different analysis. What we found with the GDP piece was that overall, advertising makes up something like 0.75% of GDP. And this has been relatively consistent over the last 20 years or so. And I think this just sort of shows how important the industry is to the economy, in that, it accounts for, quite a large percent of the economy, but also it's responsible for a lot of sales within retail and all sorts of things for other industries as well.
Media Trends Report is an annual report. Does it mean exactly that we're looking into this 1 year planning horizon? And what tools do we have then to have better optics and look into shorter term planning and longer term planning? Because, trends, well, I wouldn't say it's a loaded word, but trends come and go.
So to create the trends, what we do is we look, as I said earlier, we look at sort of spotting patterns within the sorts of things that clients are asking, the sorts of things that we're able to do now that we weren't able to do a year ago, the sorts of innovations that we see in the marketplace and things like that. And then we try to work out which of these are most relevant, which of these are things that we should be alerting clients about, which of these are the sorts of things that clients should be building into their test and learn for the years ahead and things. So when we do the trends report, we then effectively go out and speak to a lot of our biggest clients and talk them through the trends in a presentation. We talk about implications specific to them, and what we try to say is, here is something which is new. Here is something that we literally couldn't do a year ago. This is a way that you could use it, or this is something that we think you should be thinking about. And then the account teams, may develop projects on the back of that.
In the Media Trends Report 2022, did we see or did we forecast that it's going to be a massive, massive rise of AI in 2023?
So we actually published the media trends for the 2023 media trends. We actually published them towards the end of 2022, and ChatGPT only launched on the 30th of November 2022. So it was actually we weren't actually aware of that before then. There were things going on, like a lot of people were experimenting with the image creation tools and things like that, but we hadn't realized, well, obviously we hadn't foreseen ChatGPT, because I don't think that many people had outside of the AI industry. But also I think because it was, it was such a landmark thing that we couldn't quite see into it. And what we also try to do is we try to not really talk about the super speculative things, the flying cars and things like that. We wait to see whether something is actually practical, whether something is actually things that clients can use now. So in previous years, we talked about blockchain, we've talked about metaverse, we talked about NFTs and things like that. And there have always been examples of brands experimenting with how you could use this, whether it be, using blockchain for supply chain, or using the metaverse to promote things to certain niche audiences, or using NFTs again to sort of try to reach super fans and things. So we can show examples of that. But with something, so a year ago with something like generative AI, it wasn't really something that we could say to people, and you can go and do this, and you can go and do this tomorrow. So we try to be, we try to be comparatively cautious with these sorts of things. We don't want to be the people, talking about the the very, very out there stuff. Because, and I think if we had, you'd be able to look back at things that we'd have said in 2015 or whatever that would seem quite outlandish.
The Media Trends report claims that we live in the world of lookalike apps. Platforms become really convergent. They're trying to offer as much as possible, as many tools as possible, but the tools are already present on other platforms, let's say. So where does this total convergence of platforms functionality lead us from a user standpoint exactly? And what's the future for the platforms themselves? Are they going to try to craft their own unique selling propositions, unique value propositions, or are they going to follow this pathway of trying to be everything for everybody?
So there's a few things going on. So where we talk about lookalike apps, what we mean is the usability is very, very similar. So if you can use Instagram, you can probably use almost any app you download onto your phone, because they all use the same sort of combination of swipes and taps and things like that. But my Instagram is totally different to yours. I could show you my Instagram after this session, and you would not recognize any of the posters on it, because obviously it's designed for the things that I've shown I've liked. I sometimes go and cat sit for one of my friends, actually, and when I watch her Netflix, it's like a completely different world, because her Netflix algorithm shows her completely different shows to the ones that I see on mine, because it's learned the sort of things that I like and stuff. So while the platforms might be the same, the personalization, the algorithms means that, the experiences are personalized to people. But what we mean with this trend really is that we seem to be in this sort of phase at the moment where there hasn't been any sort of massive feature innovation for quite a long time. So apps like Snapchat, apps like Twitter, apps like TikTok came through because they had this sort of, this unique feature that the other apps at the time didn't have. What we seem to have at the moment is they're all sort of copying from each other. They're all sort of, they've all got so many different tabs on that do so many different things. But I do think that we might, possibly aided by AI, get to a point where suddenly there's another leap forward. Somebody has another, there's another major innovation, and suddenly everybody's struggling to catch up with that new app, or when the existing app integrates it or something. So I think for brands wanting to use them, they're still fantastic places to make really good, bespoke, unique experiences to people. Because even though the canvases might look the same, I think our experiences on them is actually pretty different.
Yeah, makes sense, absolutely. With the rise of AI, 2024 might be the year when we start searching for things differently, right? And that's one of the key learnings in the report, that Gen AI represents a massive paradigm shift in the way how we search. However, I was thinking about this a lot, and I think that there are two different pathways. There are two different ways of how people look for knowledge and products. So I think looking for knowledge, learning things could be conversational, and it's easy to imagine that, like, how do I do things, or what happened in 1835, let's say, right? It could be a conversation. However, when people are looking for products, for example, I need to buy some toothpaste. Should that even be a conversation? So how sure are we that those more precise product-based queries are becoming conversational?
So I think that's one of the things about social media. So I think search was always fantastic if you knew exactly what you wanted to buy. With something like, what happened with social media was, if you didn't know exactly what you wanted to buy, but you wanted just some inspiration for something. So in writing the ad spend report, we've been talking to some of our experts in the different, who work on different categories of our clients. And one of the people who works within the travel sector was saying, genuinely the Amalfi Coast has become much popular over the last few years because of people posting on Instagram and TikTok and those sorts of things. And so for something like that, for a platform like that, you're looking for inspiration. You're not necessarily searching holidays to Amalfi Coast from day one. So that's and that's sort of the difference at the moment between search and social, in that search, With search, you're looking for something very specific. But if you put into a search engine where should I go on holiday next year, it would be a disaster. I don't think you'd find anything all that interesting. And it would be all sorts of people bidding to show you where they wanted you to go and things like that. So it's possible that search, as it becomes more conversational, and as the AI algorithms learn more about you and things like that, you might say, where should I go on holiday in summer 2024? And they might say, well, actually, the Amalfi Coast would be very good. Versus you getting the inspiration from the online influencers and things like that who've been promoting it. So that's one sort of thing. But then also quite often when you ask a knowledge-based query, it's almost relevant to a product that somebody wants to sell you. So if you're asking about what happened in such and such, there might be a really fantastic new history book, or there might be a great novel about somebody who lived at that time or something, or there might be, all sorts of things relating to that you might want to buy. So I think that's the thing. I think a lot of our questions sort of potentially lead us to want to buy things anyway. And then I think also the whole thing about conversational is more, I'm sort of thinking in this sort of area, but I don't precisely know what I'm looking for. And at the moment, search isn't particularly useful for that.
The only thing I can think of now is the Amalfi Coast, apparently. So, we need to wrap this up quite quickly. Let's go. So, but, we don't trust AI for 100% yet, right? Because we still want to have our say in terms of brand safety and in terms of what we now call AI ethics. So do you see, or do we know about any trends that are quite valuable and powerful right now in the zone of AI ethics? How are we controlling that? And are we?
I'd say there's an awful lot of conversation about ethics in AI. If you look at the recent news stories about OpenAI and the big upheavals that happened there, I think a lot of that was about concerns around ethics, and it's something that there's going to be an awful lot of debate over next year. But I think I think people just need to be responsible. People need to be, certainly in what we're doing, we need to be, very clear of what we're asking the technology to do. We need to be also very clear that things like bias can creep into it. And also, obviously, we need to sense check and everything that it tells us. But in the same way that, when you look at search, you should really sense check the results that search is giving you. When you look at social media, you should definitely sense check the results or you should definitely sense check the things that people on social media are telling you. So I think it's really just about, having a level of restraint and sort of thinking, just sort of stepping back and thinking, I don't believe this is the only answer. This is potentially something which is going to allow me to create something, or something which is going to allow me to be more efficient in what I do. But, we should be really cautious of taking anything as, sort of absolute truth, of sort of filtering it through our own life experience, our own common sense as well.
As we are wrapping things up in 2023 with this particular episode, Dan, do you have anything like, I would say not a mantra, but something for 2024 for our brands and our external viewers? Like, what's going to be important there? What would you wish them?
I think 2024 is going to be a really fascinating year. I think lots of things are going to be happening. There's obviously the big events that we spoke about earlier. The economy looks like it's going to start to improve, partly driven by the events and everything related to that. So ad expenditure is going to rise as well. But what also is going to be really fascinating is that a lot of the AI stuff that we're talking about at the moment is going to really start to be material, making material differences to our lives. So we're seeing lots of technology companies offering products like co-pilots, effectively productivity tools that you can integrate into what you're doing. There's going to be a lot of new handsets which will have the AI built in. So the Google Pixel handsets, the top end ones, will have lots of tools built in for things like photography and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be a really fascinating year, but also it's going to be really fascinating to see, how we change the way we work in terms of, how we integrate these tools into making what we do more efficient, how we manage to make more from less, and those sorts of things as well.
And this has been the short story of 2024 through the lens of 2023. Merry Christmas.